Good afternoon and welcome back in after your lunch.
First time I heard my song on the radio, I remember I was driving down the road and I had the windows down, and then all of a sudden it's like, and here's Miranda Lambert's White Liar, and it's like, doom, 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 doom. I had the little long intro. It's like, hey, White Liar. And I was just like, yeah. And I'm driving down, I was just like, my hair is blowing in the wind, and I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And then I got on the phone and started calling everybody, so. And then after that happened, I wanted to do it again, please. Another single. Hi, my name is Natalie Hemby. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a songwriter here in Nashville. I've been a songwriter for 20 years. And I just want to let you know, radio, that you are so important in my life. You are part of my livelihood, and you help me, inspire me actually, to write better songs. Actually, just, it's a dream of mine to always have had a song on the radio. So the fact that you guys get behind us songwriters means the world to us. It helps us pay our bills, send our kids to school, all that good stuff. But it also helps fuel our creativity every day when we go into work. It means the world to us that you get behind us and you play our songs, and I just want to thank you for that, sincerely.
Good afternoon and welcome back in after your lunch today, and welcome back to CRS 2018. I'm Tom Hanrahan with the CRB board, and we are thrilled to have Lucchese back, participating once again as a very valuable partnership with CRS. This panel features, good news for you, a giveaway for a $500 gift certificate towards a new pair of boots. And so we hope you dropped the business card into the entry bucket earlier today. And of course, to pick our last winner of CRS 2018, help me welcome in Randy Steele, Director of Partnership Marketing for Lucchese Boots.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think some of you were in the other panel earlier where I thanked you all for allowing Lucchese to be a part of CRS. I'd like to add one quick note, a personal note, that I'm one of a gazillion people who feel this way, but I want to say a personal thank you to all of those who attend. For the people who visit the Lucchese booth and put your cards in the booths for the drawing and all of that, but also a really personal part. I have been in my business for 35 years. I've literally drove over 1 million miles across the state of Texas selling cowboy boots over the last 35 years, and you've helped make the roads a little less lonely. So I'm grateful for that. I'm honored to be a part of this. I'm going to dig down deep. That's kind of like the early bird gets the worm, I think. You got in early. I'm going to pull one out here. Got to be present to win. And it looks like to me, J-Rod from KMOZ. Come on down. This is the boot he won. He doesn't get any other. Yes. Yes. Awesome. He said he's already got his Lucchese's on. I knew I liked him the most. Thank y'all again. Safe travels.
Thank you, Randy, and get ready for an exciting panel coming up here in just a moment. Radio 2025, the future is now. A couple announcements. First, we want to acknowledge the ACM and, of course, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, both longtime friends of Country Radio Seminar. By the way, they're both sponsors tonight of the new Fascia Show coming up tonight, where we feature some of the hottest acts in country music. In fact, the top 5 hottest acts in country music tonight, as voted on by you. So once again, we want to thank the ACMs and St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for making that dinner possible tonight. Speaking of the dinner tonight, if you have New Faces tickets and you're not using them, We would like for you to turn those back in at the registration tables or give them to perhaps someone on the agenda committee or a CRB board member. There are a lot of people wanting tickets for tonight's show. It is sold out, so if you're not going to be able to attend, we would love to reutilize those tickets if you'll turn those back in, please. Also, a few other announcements. Radio Disney Country, the New Faces After Party. This is coming up tonight, a star-studded lineup right after the New Faces show featuring Kaylee Shore, Bailey Bryan, and more. You can also stop by the Rebel Engine Lobby Bar for cocktails and a chance to enter for that Regions Green Bike. Also want to remind everybody throughout the last couple of days, we've made mention of this, but all the sessions at CRS 2018 are available. After the seminar, if you'd like to get a specific panel perhaps you are not able to attend, everything is recorded. You can go onto the app and get more information about that or on the CRB website. We also want to know how we're doing during CRS 2018. The app gives you a chance to vote in every panel that you've attended over the last couple of days, including this one, where we get real analytics in real time. We encourage you to leave verbatim comments because the agenda committee and the chair, the co-chair, and the rest of the committee will review those comments as we plan CRS 2019. So many times we look at that information and decide, do we want to continue this theme? Do we want to continue this topic? And you give us that valuable information. Before the session starts, I just want to remind everyone to please put your cell phones in silent mode. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for our panel today, Radio 2025, The Future is Now, Mr. Bob Richards.
Thank you. When I walked in and saw that they opened up the room from the earlier configuration to this larger size, I thought, we have a lot to measure up to. And then I realized, oh, Brad Paisley follows us. So it's good to be Brad Paisley's opening act. And we think we have some really powerful content and topics to cover to help you prepare in a couple of different ways for radio over the next 8 years, hitting to 2025. And in those ways that we'd like for you to walk away from this session to be prepared for is in your career for yourself. How can you prepare and what do you need to do over the next 8 years to continue to be successful? And the other area is in the technology. We've seen it so far in this seminar, and we're inundated with it, either our own personal use or the way that we're adapting our product for the different platforms. Not just technology, distribution. We're going to try and cover that too. So please help me welcome our panel who will lead us through this today. He's the Senior Vice President and Brand Manager of iHeartCountry, Rod Phillips. Also the Executive Vice President of Content and Programming for Cumulus and Westwood One, Mike McVeigh. And we have the Director of the Music Business Program at NYU, Professor Larry Miller. We had one other panelist who was planning on joining us, and unfortunately he sends his regrets. He was held up by travel, and so Pat Paxton will not be joining us today. So let's get right into the conversation, gentlemen. So, we've all been experiencing this massive disruption. Hello. Thank you. So we've all been experiencing this massive disruption, really coming from digital, but other platforms for a while now. And it seems like not just millennial generation, but Generation Z, but also everyone else is changing the way that we need to look at our business. I mean, when my 81-year-old mom loves her Amazon Echo and communicates with her grandkids and great-grandkids through Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, it's all changed. Now, granted, that's my focus group of one, but using that to set up our conversation today and knowing that everything that exists, how can we prepare ourselves? Let's start there with how can we prepare for what's to come over the next 8 years? What skills, what talents, the way we search for jobs, the way we do our jobs. So, Larry, I would like to start with your perspective. What are some of those things that we can do over the next 8 years to prepare ourselves?
You know, looking around this panel and around this convention, and I haven't been to a CRS in a very long time. And before I say anything, that for those of you who I don't know, I grew up in the radio business. I have always loved radio. I dreamed of doing nothing but being on radio as a kid, I think, as many of us did. And yet, today, the way that our audiences consume audio content has fragmented in some demographics more than others fairly dramatically. And so I would argue that the skills that we need to develop might be some of the very ones that drove us to get into this business in the first place, and in some cases may have been in hibernation for some period of time. But the passion, the love, the capacity to tell a story, especially in bite-sized length, is more important than ever before.
So, Rod, how would you answer that question?
I would first say he sounds like a movie trailer when he talks. Anybody else knows that? Those tones are fantastic. That's an interesting start, because I think it is all about modern-day program director and modern-day air personality. As an eternal optimist, I see all of this as only a fantastic opportunity. It's just that the modern-day talent, whether you're programming on air or both, has to address it as it's not even about the radio show. I was going to say it's not just about the radio. It's not about the radio show. It's about a brand. It's about having that brand on radio stations, which listeners are still hearing at a 93% clip across America, and then really strategically using the other outlets and opportunities to expand your brand. It's really, it makes you bigger than radio ever could have made you if you take advantage. And then we'll get into later probably how that changes the business. I mean, we are still making our money off radio spots, right? And as we expand the brands, and Michael talked about where the ratings are, we probably have more content being consumed than ever before, but radio ratings would suggest that we are on a decline. We're only on a decline because that's how they're buying advertising versus monetizing all those other elements that you can get into, social media and everything that we can talk about. But the digital world is really just an amazing opportunity. We got to get into it from a revenue side.
So, Mike, you're recruiting talent every day, and hearing Rod talk about how talent recognizing that they're a brand is so important, and that's just going to get more and more important as we get into the next 8 years. When you're looking at, and unfortunately part of our industry is looking for a job. When you're looking at resumes and you're recruiting talent, how do you see that process possibly changing, and how can we all prepare for it?
Well, it still starts with a great show, right? I mean, you have to be entertaining, you have to have showbiz, be a character. We talk a little bit about, it being on radio. I think Rod's absolutely right that it's wherever you are. I mean, that person that wants to entertain, period, whether it's on radio or online or at a party. That's the first thing, being a great, engaging, entertaining individual who's a great storyteller, who can do it succinctly, who is enjoyable, that you want to be around. And then not just how they sound on the radio, but what's their engagement in social media? What's their engagement with digital? Are they doing podcasts? Do they understand sales? A great air talent, if I have two air talent and both sound great, and in checking references, one of them gets in a car and rides along with salespeople later in the day, that's going to give them more points. And so I think it's really, being a great air talent and understanding the business, and we are mercenaries, we are about generating revenue. That person has all of those entertainment skills, social skills, and is willing to break down the barriers. The greatest challenge I run into today the greatest challenge with talent, that is, are individuals who either don't understand their brand, don't understand how to build a brand, or are unwilling to work as hard as you have to create a brand.
So where do we find those people who are not in radio now? So, you know, a long, long time ago, we used to hire people who had voices or a voice like Larry's and have them read liner cards. They sounded great. Then we hired interesting people and we taught them radio. What's the next step? Because like the music business, who is searching online for the massive following, and that audience is built in already before they move to a label, where do we find our talent in the future?
Can I start with that?
Yeah, that's for you, Mike.
Starting with a conference like this, I always talk about Elena D. Smith, and I don't know if Elena from National Nights Live is here or not, but I was at a conference a couple years ago, and a morning show in San Diego, Jeff and Jer brought this young woman over who was just finishing college, who had interned with them, and said she also does a weekend shift, and introduced her to me. And like guys like us do, we have lots of people come to us, and you say, let me hear your audio. And I popped it on when I got it, a week later, and thought I'd listen to 10 or 15 seconds and see, and it snagged me right away. And we happened to have a morning co-host opening in Melbourne, Florida, on a top 40 radio station, and I called her and said, if you're willing to starve, you can be a co-host in Melbourne, Florida, and learn your skill and throw that football through the tire 1,000 times and get better. And she right away said yes, and a week after that, she calls me. She's in a car with her father. They're driving across America. I don't even know if I told the station yet that we were hiring her, and she was calling to find out where they were going to stay when they got there, and so it goes. And Elena was only there about a year when we moved her here to Nashville to be part of a nighttime show. So events like this are a great opportunity. I can tell you guys like Rod and I spent a lot of time online looking at people's social media, finding out who's attracted. I mean, jump on. You and I are living that same life where we're competing for talent.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about talent, and again, when I say that word, I'm certainly talking about really program directors or music directors and talent on air. I think we would all agree, I know we would all agree, we've talked about this, when you go to look for somebody to hire and do whatever position, Melbourne or New York, it is not like you have a long list of impressive folks to choose from. Mm-hmm. As much as the industry has been knocked for consolidation and fewer jobs and things like that, you would think they'd be lined up at the back door, highly qualified, ready to go. I only say that because we do need to continue to develop talent, bring talent in. It oftentimes is not coming from radio, mostly because they're not in line, like you might think they are, and then we really do need a different kind of perspective. I don't think it's giving up any secrets that the real and authentic play is what listeners and your consumers want. Anything trying to sound like we all tried to sound back in the day it's completely fake, and they don't like it, and they call it out and make fun of it. So the being real, having something interesting going on in your life is a bigger thing than being able to speak clearly and enunciate all your words.
I'm curious for any of the three of you, if you've been successful in identifying talent that wasn't already on AM/FM radio someplace and turned them into a successful radio talent.
I have an example, a guy named Zach Sang, who today I think just turned 22, had an internet radio show in his basement. And Zach is on Westwood One Radio Network. It's a nighttime top 40 syndicated show. But when Zach was 14, I was getting emails from this kid that he would take a picture of me from one of the trades and put himself beside me and have a balloon coming out of my head that would say, "Wow, Zach, you're wonderful," or things like that. And it got my attention that this kid was sending these. And after I got over the stalker moment, I went online and listened to him and found him to be really, really good. And I happened to be, he lived in New Jersey across from New York City. I happened to be in New York City for a meeting and, reached out to him and said, "Do you want to get together?" And And I'll never forget it. Again, 14-year-old kid. I show up at the restaurant, and his father and a lawyer are there. And Zach's not there yet. He's taking a train in from after school. And we sat down and talked, and I encouraged him to keep doing the show from his basement for a while, and, a couple years. And to show what I know, he ended up on Nickelodeon when he was about 17 or something, and we hired him at 19 or 20 to launch this show. So
I'll tell this just quickly because we talk about it on the air on our national morning show basically every day. There are 8 people associated daily with the Bobby Bones Show. Hopefully I didn't miss somebody, sorry. I believe there's 8. 7 of them did not have a radio job before joining the show. Bobby was the only one who was a jock in Little Rock before going to mornings. And literally, he selected and picked most of those folks. But even from a producer standpoint, they came in from everything but radio.
So let's move to technology and distribution platforms. It's changing at a crazy pace. We saw yesterday lots of interesting and optimistic stats that came from the smart speaker study that Larry and Megan from Edison presented. And one of the reasons to be optimistic is 96% of those responding to the survey said that the reason they bought that device was to listen to music. Larry, in a paper that you published last fall called Paradigm Shift, Why Radio Must Adapt to the Rise of Digital, highly suggest that you find that online and read it. You have a circumspect view of that optimism, and so explain that. Explain what you wrote about in your paper, and well, you might be a little bit of a contrarian.
So when I spoke with, I don't know if Larry Rosen's in the room. If you are, hi, Larry. We can't see anything up here. At the time I was putting the paper out, I remember speaking with Larry, and we were talking about the future. And in particular, we were talking about the future for AM/FM radio in a smart speaker and connected car and autonomous driving, remediated world, say, over the next 5 to 10 years. And I'll never forget what Larry said. He said, honestly, I'm more of a presentist than a futurist. And I thought hard about that. And so I looked very closely at what the Edison data had been saying over the last couple of years in 2016 and 17, but also looked elsewhere at big companies who make their living, like Gartner and other places, doing industrial strength trend forecasting for mostly hardware and services industries. One thing that I've discovered since then is that where smart speakers and voice interactivity is concerned in particular, that those futurists, those trend forecasters, are calling for a $13 billion voice smart speaker hardware business within the next 4 to 5 years or so. It's a dramatically bigger business than the one that exists today, notwithstanding the very high growth rates in smart speaker sales and adoption between last year and this year. And so when it came time to name the paper, and we thought to call it what it was, which is a very important paradigm shift. And part of what's driving the shift is this shift in mode of interactivity to the voice. And so, today, most of us who have smart speakers have them because they're fun and interesting, they're potentially important, they're already important for the radio industry and the development of whole new segments, I think, of radio industry services with respect to helping programmers and stations and groups bring skills into the marketplace. But there are just a ton of issues that certainly this industry is facing now in a much pointier way than I think has ever been the case. And I know that a couple of decades ago, the last time I was coming to radio conventions on a regular basis, it wasn't as if we couldn't see this coming at some point. We all knew that it would happen. We've just fortunately lived long enough to be the people engaged with managing this transition. And so I think we have a giant opportunity in front of us, but it is a huge dilemma, right? How do you continue to fund and program and create the legacy business while building what could be, in a decade, a whole new industry?
Well, Mike, continue on with that thought, because during yesterday's presentation, it was mentioned that there's a fear of complacency. Our medium does not have the best track record when it comes to taking advantage of new distribution platforms. So what are your thoughts on that fear of complacency when it comes to, we're just going to make sure our station's available on smart speakers, and that's about it?
I think it has to go much wider than that. I mean, you know, I know a number of you saw our CEO speak yesterday, and in an offsite maybe 9 months ago or so, I was in a meeting and we were talking, and I had said, we were talking about radio, and there's a continual decline in persons using radio, and I'll show you just real quick if I can get this to do it. This is showing country all across America in AQH persons. Now that decline probably doesn't look big to you, but what's happening is it's about a 5 to 7% decline year over year in persons using radio in general. Country is holding in there better than other formats. News talk is crashing pretty precipitously. You know, sports stations are sliding more. If you pull out the spoken word stations, you see the trend of decline slow, but it really is a concern. And rating, which is what, you know, in large markets advertisers buy, they buy that point rating, is, you know, you see somebody go from 0.4 to a 0.3, and in a market like New York City, it's, you know, $10 million or $12 million that you can lose in the course of a year. And so it's pretty significant. And so in that offsite, you know, I was talking about the fact that I believe we have to improve the listener and advertiser experience. And Mary's initial comment to me was, and by the way, I've changed her thinking, but her initial comment was, I came from print, that was a declining industry, radio might be a declining industry. And I said I beg to differ. I think we're committing genocide. iHeart is on here, Pandora is on here, TuneIn is on here, so on and so forth. We talk about smart audio, and be it Amazon, Google, or whatever Apple will come out with, and whoever's next, that puts radio back in the home. But it still has to be a better listening experience. And when you listen to radio only on a stream, if it's not total line reporting, in many markets you hear call letters cut off, you hear commercials upcut, you hear 4 McGruff the Crime Dog PSAs in a row, and so we have got to, we can fix this, and don't kid yourself that Apple isn't going to compete with 100 channels, and Amazon isn't going to compete with 100 channels, and we can fix it. But I think we've got to go back and do things that will be painful, and we probably can't rip the Band-Aid off immediately. We have to peel it back a little at a time. We have to address spot loads. We have to lower spot loads. 12 minutes could mean, you know, stopping twice an hour, 6 minutes each, and 15 units in that 6-minute stop set. We got to figure out how to get around that. We need to hire back copywriters. Not only do we run too many commercials, we run bad commercials. You know, we have eliminated production people. We don't do research like we used to. We don't do marketing like we did. And so I don't think any of us should be surprised that we are seeing persons using radio going down month after month when compared to a year ago. And so it's a real true challenge. I'm sorry Pat Paxton's not here. One of the markets that I used as a study, because we don't own stations there, is Seattle. And in Seattle, Entercom dropped their spot load on a couple of their stations to 6 minutes an hour and launched a 2-minute promise, never more than 2 minutes of commercials back to back. And they stopped 3 times an hour. And as those stations' ratings popped up, then Hubbard and some of the other competitors in the market matched them. And as I looked at persons using radio in markets across America, Seattle went up initially, came down and leveled, and is not seeing the same persons using radio decline that we're seeing in other markets. And so I think there's proof there that if we have great content and we improve the listening experience, all of those different platforms can only help radio do better.
So, Rod, do you think 8 years from now, if we truly are platform agnostic, that music radio will carry 10, 12 commercials an hour? Not commercials, minutes, sorry.
That it'll get down to that?
Get down to that. That's 10 to 12 minutes an hour. Do you think that that will still exist 8 years from now if we are truly platform agnostic?
Well, let me approach it this way, kind of dovetailing off what Mike was saying. It goes back to something I at least hoped I was teasing when I first spoke, which is the radio stations is a magnificent base for brands and content. You know, when we see that decline, that everybody knows it, everybody sees it, that means that the time spent listening is down because there's so much more to take folks' time and listeners' time away from the radio. But that 93% number is the most important number, and it's unbelievably impressive, right? That more than 9 people out of 10 listen to the radio on a weekly basis. They're coming. We just have to have them everywhere else we're going to be. And then to Mike's point of we can't just keep lowering spot loads or cost per point or the price of the spot and add spots. We have to maintain credibility there, and then we have to do a better job of when we extend that brand and we have a client and a Lucchese boot is your sponsor that gets radio spots, it gets some kind of social play. You got to be careful with that. It gets on the podcast, it gets on your blog, on the website. Right now, we're asking for less money for the spot and giving them all that stuff on the side versus monetizing all of that extra. So if we do those things and monetize all of the other extensions of our brand, where listeners are spending more time, quite honestly, and feel more connected. I mean, they're following you, they're really connected, right? They're super P1s, which at that point, you're super influential over them, right? You can influence them to do things. So right now, we literally are, we, meaning the radio industry, we're giving it away. If we change that thought process and that strategy and we can actually monetize it, then yeah, I think we're fine in 2025.
Well, part of what will help that is being able to show ROI. And I know Westwood One is doing or taking steps. And so I have a question, Larry, for you about Nielsen. First, though, we've got about 6 minutes. I can't see. If anyone has a question, please step up to the mic. And following this, we'll take a few questions from the audience. So, Larry, as we move to a streaming platform, big issues with Nielsen and the way that the audience is weighted over the air versus the stream.
Right.
Talk about that.
One super important issue is that even in just listening to the conversation and the presentations this morning, it's become super critical to engage your P1 so that when they're sitting there loving your radio station and loving what you played and listening all the way through to that last song in the driveway or in the parking lot at work before they go into the office, when they walk into that building, and even if they do what we want them to do and listen to B100 or whatever the radio station is on the smart speaker that they have in their office or in their kitchen, they've gone from counting, say, for 10,000 cume to, a stream of 1. Well, that's a methodology issue that I imagine all of your companies and others are pressing Nielsen daily or weekly maybe, to fix, hopefully by next
Hourly.
year.
Pressing them hourly, sorry.
Hourly. I mean, is that, I imagine that's got to be a huge issue, this methodology
So
issue.
what would you suggest, Mike, over the next 8 years that we would hope happen and bring that together to where it's more equitable, to where we do have a better audience measurement system that's going to allow us to then monetize more and show a better return on investment?
Well, I mean, that's a tough one because, Nielsen's the only company out there. There are other companies, don't get me wrong, but they're the only ones who have the meters. I think the meter is significantly better than number 2 lead pencil and a piece of paper. And so it's much better than the diary markets. The sample needs to be significantly larger. Nielsen is talking about, separating all of digital listening, and so total line reporting will become a thing of the past. When that happens, you won't find us simulcasting anymore. Larry Rosen and I spoke a little bit yesterday about his comment that, from a metric standpoint, at Cumulus right now, every hour we're promoting Listen to Alexa because we've enabled Alexa skills on, 400 radio stations. And if we don't have total line reporting, then we're encouraging a program director to affect their ratings and their bonus. And so we're going to have to figure out how we deal with that, and if we're going to have a bonus for digital listening and over-the-air listening. But I think the only answer, Bob, from my perspective, is bigger sample sizes. And God knows for what we pay, we should get bigger sample sizes. And every market should be accredited.
It's hard for me to see. Is there anyone out there who's ready with a question? If
The only
not-
thing we can see from here is John Loba's Lucchese boots. It's all that's shining back at us right now.
So as we wrap up, I would love perspective from each one of you about why you're optimistic and what energizes you as you look forward to the next 8 years. Larry, we'll start with you.
Well, I'll take it. So I do a ton of work in the music industry. And in the music industry, they lost half their business on an inflation-adjusted basis between 2000 and 2014 before things started to go positive again. And if you walk around, primarily the 3 major music companies, not to mention the born digital recorded music companies, the vibe has changed. The people who are there have mostly changed. The skill sets that are resident in the buildings have changed. And I am excited about radio's future. It is going to be a multi-platform future. And so what I would encourage you to do would be to go out and either reawaken the skills that got you into the business to begin with, or go out and gain new skills that will enable you to build services and program for the multiple platforms that your audience is now consuming, whether you like it or not.
Rod, what energizes you? What are you optimistic about?
I think I've probably already said it, but I'll say it maybe a little bit differently. Hopefully it resonates. We're in the radio business. That's what we've called it for a long time, but it's really the content business, and it truly is unlimited. It's actually a much bigger opportunity than ever before to have fans of what you do, if what you do is interesting, compelling, entertaining, and something that's going to draw folks. Once you have them there, you have ways to talk to them in their home, not just through the radio speakers, on their computer, on their phone. You can get to them anytime, day or night, and they can respond to you. And the interactivity is unbelievable as an opportunity to, again, grow that brand. So it's the content business. It starts with the radio. That's still our core business, and it's still a pretty good one, right? But in 8 years, where's it going to be? Again, it's a great question because I am unbelievably optimistic about where that can take folks who are really serious about providing content. And I think we all know now content is not just introducing a Luke Bryan song. You have to do that when you have to do that, but you have to give listeners a reason to not just listen to the music elsewhere, but take it in on your platforms along with what you want to provide to them.
Mike, why are you bullish on radio?
I'm excited, and when you say radio, I would echo what Rod said, that it's more than just radio, it's everything. And I'm excited about millennials. I'm excited about the generation that's coming. I know that it's fun to pile on them, and you read articles about millennials, and when I read all the things that they feel and how they're unhappy with how their parents' lives are, and they want different things. The year I was born, the Korean War ended. I lived through Vietnam. I saw a lot of changes. I played music on an AM radio station, and I remember the old guys complaining about, you know, things they had to do, and I just used to think, well, why don't you retire so I can take your job? And I'm excited because I think millennials are the same way, and they're not going to look at it as AM, FM. They're going to say entertainment, and they're going to break down the barriers. And they grew up in a world that already had digital, and they'll take it beyond anything we can think of. And I don't think they will have the same mental handcuffs that we have had. And so I'm excited by hiring people like that, and by, you know, we hired a program director for KFOG in San Francisco, who, while he has radio experience, came from Pandora. And my greatest challenge has been to keep the radio guys from messing up his mind, because I want him to do it his way. And so I'm excited about that. I think once the shackles are let loose, or once we let the next generation do what they need to do, we're going to see things we never thought possible with the many, many millions of individuals who come to us daily.
Mike McVeigh, Rod Phillips, Larry Miller, thank you very much.